In this video, we're going to take a look at circles that are not in standard form. So at the top, we have an example of how we complete the square to put the equation into standard form. So we're given x squared plus y squared minus 4x plus 8y plus 11 equals 0. First, we're going to group the x and the y terms together. So we have x squared minus 4x are the x terms because those are the ones that contain x. So we put them in parentheses and we leave room to complete the square by adding an extra blank space right there. Then we group the y terms, so we have y squared plus 8y, and we group those into a parentheses and we leave space to complete the square. Then we also want to move the constant term of 11 over to the right side. So to move it, you want to do the inverse operation. So since it's positive 11, we subtract it. Then you always make sure if you're going to add two things to the left, you've got to also add them to the right. So let me grab my pen and I'm going to fill in some stuff to show you. So let's put a blank and two blanks over there. All right, so let's work on completing the square for the x and the y. You see in the next step, we've got a 4 and a 16 in those spots. So let's talk about how those numbers got there. To complete the square, you always take half of the middle term and square it. So half of negative 4 is negative 2, and negative 2 squared gives us 4. Same thing for the y values. Half of 8 is 4, and then 4 squared is 16. So then you just want to make sure that you also add the 4 and the 16 to the other side. So that's why those are also over there on the right. And in the very next step, you can write it in standard form. So we have created what's called perfect square trinomials in math. We have one for the x and one for the y values. X squared minus 4x plus 4 is a perfect square trinomial because its factors are matching. They're identical. So the factors of x squared minus 4x plus 4 are x minus 2, x minus 2, which is why we can write x minus 2 squared in place of that trinomial in that next step. So that's why we do that, but we definitely don't have to write all that out every time. We just know that's why it works. And then we have y squared plus 8y plus 16 is also now a perfect square trinomial. We've created it by that step we took before this step. So y plus 4 would be the factors of y squared plus 8y plus 16. So notice that's why we can just rewrite it as y plus 4 squared in that next step. So we're not always going to write all that out, but I just wanted to show you the why behind the steps we're taking today in these notes. Okay, so now that we have it nicely in standard form without too much work, we can pick out the center and the radius. So the center point would just be 2, negative 4, and then the square root of 9 would give us the radius, which is just 3. All right, so I have typed up the steps in the middle of the page in case you need to see them nicely written out. So the steps are that you group the x and the y terms together in separate parentheses, and you move the constant term to the other side of the equal sign. Then you use completing the square to get perfect square trinomials, and make sure to add those numbers to both sides. And then in the last step, you're just rewriting those as binomials squared, and then you simplify the constants into your radius squared. So let's just do 2 more examples from start to finish. Let me grab my pen. So we have x squared plus y squared plus 6y minus 4x plus 4 equals 0. So I'm going to group the x terms together, put a plus sign in the middle. I'm going to group the y terms together, and I'm going to move the constants over there to the right. So the x terms are x squared minus 4x, because those contain x. And then leave a space to complete the square. Then the y terms in this case are y squared plus 6y, and then leave room to complete the square. And then we want to move our constant term of 4 over to the other side. So since it's a positive 4, we just need to subtract the 4 to move it over. So that'll become negative 4, and then leave 2 more blanks over there because we got to make sure we add the same numbers to the right that we're going to add to the left. Okay, so that was our first step. It's pretty important. We group the x's, leave room to complete the square. We group the y's, we left room to complete the square, and we move the constant term over, and we left room to put the numbers there that we're going to put on the left. Okay, so the next step is to actually complete the square. So half of the middle term squared is what you want to remember. So half of -4 is -2, and then -2 squared gives us 4. Then just make sure to add that to both sides. Same thing for the y's. Half of the middle term squared. So half of 6 is 3, 3, and then 3 squared gives us 9, and then make sure to add it to the other side. All right, in the next step, we're able to write this in standard form because we've already got it ready. So to rewrite it, you just want to take x squared minus 4x, and you just want to take half of the -4, so it's x minus 2 squared. Plus y squared plus 6y is going to become y plus 3 squared. And then you want to add up your constant terms to equal the r squared. So -4 plus 4 would just give us 0, and then 0 plus 9 will just give us 9. All right, so the center point we can now easily pick out of our standard form, which would just give us 2, -3. And then our radius would just be the square root of the 9, which is 3. All right, so let's plot the center and use the radius to graph our circle. So we just got to go to 2, -3 to plot the center point. And then the radius is 3, so we just need to go 3 units in all 4 directions. So we can go right 3, up 3, left 3, and down 3. Or you could think of north, south, east, and west if you like, but then you just draw your circle. Okay, so let's just do one more example of all 3 big steps that we have. So we're going to rewrite this in standard form and graph it again. So I notice I have y squared plus 4x minus 20 minus 2y, but the -x squared is over here on the right. So we just need to move it to the left, and all that takes is just the inverse operation. So we just need to add it to get it over here on the right side. And then our same process can continue as usual. So we're going to group the x's, put a plus sign, group the y's, and move the constants over. So the x terms, notice like that one's now over here on the correct side. So we have x squared plus 4x are the x terms, and then leave room to complete the square. The y terms are y squared minus 2y, and then leave room to complete the square. And then our constant term is -20. So we just need to add 20 to scoot it over here to the right. And then we have everything organized just right. But add 2 more blanks over there so you don't forget to add those numbers that you're going to add to the left. So that's that first big step. Remember, you always want to get organized. Group the x's, group the y's, move the constant term over, and add 2 blanks. Okay. So to complete the square, we need to take half of the middle term and square it. So half of 4 is 2, and 2 squared is 4. And just add it to both sides. And the same thing for the y values. So half of the middle term and square it. So half of -2 gives us -1, and -1 squared is +1. If you haven't noticed yet, these numbers are always going to be positive that you're adding right there. And it's because you're always squaring that number in that last step. And whenever you square something, it's going to turn out to be positive. So if you notice on all of our examples today, it's always plus blank, like whatever that number is going to be a positive number. So that's always going to be the case. Okay, so we're all ready now to write it in standard form in our next step. So let's put some binomial squared, because that's what we're going to need to write. We see that we have x squared plus 4x, so take half of that number, so x plus 2. And then y squared minus 2y, so that's going to be y minus 1 squared. And then 20 plus 4 plus 1 gives us 25. And then our center point, let's see, did I use red? Yeah, all right. So the center point is going to be -2, 1. And then our radius is just gonna be the square root of 25, which is 5. So let's plot those. We have -2, 1. So go left 2, up 1 to put the center point. And then the radius, we need to go 5 units from the center in all directions. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 down. And then just sketch a circle as best you can. It doesn't have to be perfect. All right, so that's it for circles that are not in standard form.